Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. We're diving straight into today's buzzing feed from X. We'll give you that sharp, punchy roundup of what's trending. Think of it as your shortcut to staying plugged into the global conversation. Everything from surprising economic shifts, cultural reflections, and even tech breakthroughs.
Exactly. We've pulled together a selection of posts today that offer some, really fascinating insights. We're aiming for a balanced view, but, without getting bogged down on any single point. It's really about quickly connecting those dots and seeing the currents shaping things today.
Okay, let's kick things off. This one from @SuzyRizzo1 is definitely stirring up some real concern. It reads, Kentucky faces major job loss after three major whiskey and bourbon distilleries file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Wow, that sounds pretty serious for the bluegrass state, not just a small ripple.
No, it certainly isn't. And what's really worth noting here is this isn't just happening in a vacuum. The bankruptcy filings for Girard County, Stoli Group, and Luca Mariano, they're not just isolated incidents. They actually line up with a broader trend we've been tracking. There was a 1.8% sales drop for American whiskey last year.
Okay, 1.8%. So what's driving that?
Well, it seems to be a mix. Inflation is definitely a big part, hitting people's spending power. But there's also a noticeable shift, kind of, in what people are drinking. We're seeing more interest in things like canned cocktails, maybe even non-alcoholic options.
Right, the market's changing. But the Post also hinted at something else, this Canadian boycott. That feels like a whole different layer. How does a trade spat escalate like that?
That's a really crucial piece of this puzzle. Yeah, Canada's retaliatory boycott, it stemmed from a U.S. tariff. And reports estimate it cost Kentucky something like $43 million in exports just in 2023.
43 million. That's huge.
It is. And the Kentucky Distillers Association, they're warning this could potentially lead to as many as 31,000 job losses.
31,000. Good grief.
Yeah. And you have to remember, Canada has historically been the top international market for Kentucky spirits. So when that market suddenly shrinks or gets taxed heavily, the economic hit is immediate and severe. It's a stark reminder, really, of how interconnected things are. Trade disputes aren't abstract. They hit livelihoods hard.
Absolutely. A direct line from global policy to local jobs. Okay, let's shift gears now. Moving from those economic waves to something maybe more profound, more personal. The search for meaning. Pope Leo XIV, posting as @Pontifex, shared this. What is the true meaning of life? What can free us from being trapped in meaninglessness, boredom, and mediocrity? The fullness of our existence does not depend on what we store up or what we possess. Rather, fullness has to do with what we joyfully welcome and share.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? And very timely. This post ties right into his first big international event as Pontiff, the Jubilee of Youth, happening in Rome. And his core message there, just like in this post, really hammers home shared joy and connection over just stuff, material possessions.
So he's pushing back against that modern idea of success equals wealth.
Directly. Yeah. He's challenging that narrative that ties happiness and self-worth purely to what you own or accumulate. He's asking us to rethink what fullness really means.
Okay, but, in a world so focused on getting ahead, on material goals, how practical is this? Does this kind of message actually lead to, measurable well-being? Or is it more philosophical?
That's the key question, isn't it? And what's compelling is that it's not just philosophy anymore. There's actually growing psychological research backing this up. A 2017 study found that shared experiences correlate much more strongly with long-term life satisfaction than buying things does.
Interesting. Shared experiences over material goods.
Exactly. And the timing here with the Jubilee, it feels strategic. It seems like an effort to counter a pretty worrying trend. Since 2015, there's been a reported 25% jump in young people feeling a sense of meaninglessness.
25%. Wow.
Yeah. So the insight here is that focusing on shared joy, on welcoming others, it's not just spiritual advice. It looks like a genuine psychological pathway to feeling better, to finding meaning, especially when people feel increasingly isolated.
A potent counter-narrative indeed. Okay, sticking with societal shifts, let's hop across the pond. This post from @BGatesASapisco captures a kind of cultural melancholy. It includes a quote, seemingly from a pub owner. It's 6 o'clock on a Saturday night and we have no customers. Life is changing, and the poster adds, this is so sad, old Britain is never coming back.
That quote really hits home, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this big cultural shift happening in the UK. There was a Guardian report in 2024 that noted the number of pubs in England and Wales dropped below 39,000 for the first time ever. And get this, over 34 pubs are closing every month on average.
34 a month. That's staggering. Pubs were always such central hubs, right? More than just bars.
Absolutely. They were community cornerstones.
Mm.
And their struggle is, well, it's complicated. There are definitely economic pressures, rising costs, taxes, the usual suspects. But there's more to it. Big legislative changes, like the smoking ban years ago, changed the vibe for a lot of people.
Right, that had a big impact.
It did. And then there are just changing social habits. How we socialize is different now. Maybe fewer spontaneous meetups, more planned events, or, virtual hangouts. Plus, younger generations might prefer different spots. And home entertainment's obviously huge now. So the traditional pub's role as the social hub is fading. It's reflecting a wider change in how communities connect.
A real cultural barometer, as you said. Okay, let's pivot again. From community spaces to individual resilience. This insight from @Delanoe4 uses a famous quote. Okay, so that Miles Davis quote, "If you hit a wrong note, it's the next note you play that determines if it's good or bad," applies to basically everything.
It's a brilliant quote, isn't it? So universally applicable. It's all about adaptation, bouncing back. And what was really interesting in the replies to this post was how fast the conversation shifted. It went from Miles Davis straight into gaming.
Gaming, how so?
Someone replied asking about playing solo versus playing in a group, which immediately reminded me of this discussion back in 2021 on Reddit. A lot of gamers were saying they actually preferred small groups. They felt it was less stressful, more fun than playing alone.
Huh. From jazz philosophy to multiplayer strategy. So the next note idea isn't just about individual recovery, it's collaborative too.
Exactly, and there's actually science behind this. A 2019 study looked at this very thing. It found that gaming in groups actually boosts social bonding. And get this, it lowered cortisol levels, the stress hormone, by about 17% compared to playing solo.
Lowered stress. That's counterintuitive for some games.
Right. But it suggests that collaboration itself, figuring things out together, even recovering from mistakes together, is beneficial. So that Miles Davis principle, it really does apply everywhere. How we respond to setbacks, especially with others, changes the whole tune.
A great reminder. Okay, let's move into the tech world. Elon Musk shared an image recently. It's kind of a humorous take comparing Grok 4, xAI's new AI model, to other AIs, depicting Grok as, well, the dominant dog in the picture.
Yes, it's a pretty clear visual statement about perceived superiority. And Grok 4, which just launched last month, July 9th, 2025, is being billed by xAI as, quote, the most intelligent model in the world. It does have some impressive upgrades, listed native tool use, real-time search, a new super Grok heavy tier.
Okay, standard upgrades. But what really jumped out at me was this reported feature. Grok 4 apparently searches for Elon Musk's own views before answering some questions. That seems unusual for an AI. What are the implications there?
It is a very unique design choice, and yes, it's definitely sparked a lot of conversation among AI watchers. I mean, look, all AI models have biases baked in from their training data that's unavoidable. But explicitly programming an AI to check one specific person's viewpoint, that raises particular questions about objectivity, about potential slant.
So is it presenting Musk's view as fact or just context?
That's the nuance, right? It's not necessarily bad if it's transparent about what it's doing, but it does mean the user needs to be aware they might be getting information filtered through that specific lens. It really highlights this ongoing debate about AI transparency. How much should we know about the underlying values or instructions shaping AI responses, especially when it might align with a prominent founder's views?
Definitely something to keep an eye on, the hidden frameworks. All right, next up, a post that seems to be hitting a nerve from @Greg16676935420. If I order my food standing up, I'm not leaving a tip.
Oof. Yeah, that sentiment really taps into this growing frustration, doesn't it? Particularly in the U.S. regarding tipping culture. And it's not just anecdotal grumbling. A Bankrate survey from 2024 found 66% of Americans view tipping negatively now.
2/3. That's a lot.
It is. And 30% went further, calling tipping out of control. A big driver seems to be those constant prompts you get everywhere now. Self-service kiosks, coffee shops, just picking up takeout. It really challenges that old idea that tips are strictly for, exceptional sit-down service.
The expectation has definitely broadened or maybe blurred. So is this just a phase, people being annoyed? Or does it signal a bigger shift in how we think about service compensation, especially with more self-service?
I think it signals a pretty fundamental shift, actually. It tracks with the rise of self-service overall. Remember that report showing a 15% jump in self-service orders since 2019? As the labor involved changes, the rationale for the traditional tip amount becomes less clear for many people.
So the value proposition is changing.
Exactly. And there was even a Cornell study in 2023 suggesting that mandatory tipping in low-service situations, like just ordering at a counter, actually reduced customer satisfaction by 12%. It suggests the current system feels increasingly out of step with how services are actually delivered and perceived now.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a reevaluation
It's a
period.
reevaluation, yeah. Okay, shifting to a much more serious tone now. Geopolitics. From @unusual whales, this alert. Breaking. Taiwan's Deputy Foreign Minister Wu Chi-chung has said that China is preparing to invade Taiwan.
That is a deeply concerning statement. And it's important to note it echoes previous warnings. Back in 2022, Taiwan's own defense ministry suggested a possible timeline around 2027 for such an action. They specifically cited China's ongoing and significant military buildup.
Yeah.
Of course, this all goes back to the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949 and the unresolved status of Taiwan in Beijing's view.
Right. The historical context is crucial, but connecting it to today, beyond the politics, what are the global stakes? Why should someone listening, say in Europe or the Americas, pay close attention to this?
The economic stakes are almost impossible to overstate. It comes down to one critical industry: semiconductors. Taiwan produces something like 60% of the entire world's semiconductors, the really advanced chips too.
60%.
Yeah. Think about what runs on those chips. Phones, computers, cars, medical tech, crucial military hardware, everything. Any conflict there, any disruption to that supply would trigger an immediate and catastrophic global economic crisis. It would make the pandemic's supply chain issues look minor in comparison. Industries would halt, inflation would soar. So these warnings, they're not just regional politics, they're alerts about a potential earthquake that would shake the entire global economy.
Truly sobering. Okay, let's try to wrap up on a slightly lighter note, though it still has some interesting angles. This is a business idea pitched by @LevonBell. Hear me out. A food truck that sells chicken sandwiches. I could park it next to Chick-fil-A, and it'll only be open on Sunday's face. I'll call it Side Chick.
Hey, okay, it's clever, I'll give them that. And it definitely highlights that obvious market gap Chick-fil-A creates every Sunday. But what's funny is how the internet works. While it sounds like a fresh idea,
It's probably not.
well, replies immediately pointed out it's kind of a known concept. The name Sunday Side Chicks has been a meme, and apparently someone even tried to make a go of it as a business back in 2022.
Ah, the internet hive mind strikes again. So, okay, originality aside for a second. Chick-fil-A closes on Sundays. That's based on their founder's decision way back in '46. It creates an opportunity. But could a truck called Side Chick, parked right next door, actually, survive?
You know,
Legally?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the cease and desist question. There was apparently a media company that considered a very similar food truck idea and backed off. Why? Concerns about potential lawsuits from Chick-fil-A trademark issues, unfair competition, that sort of thing.
Right, playing that close to the flame.
Exactly. And while we don't have studies on, like, stealing Twitter ideas, research on food truck success does stress location, obviously, but also originality. A concept seen as just piggybacking, even if it's clever, might struggle. Not just legally, but building its own loyal customer base. It's a good reminder. A catchy name isn't enough. You need a solid, defensible concept, especially when you're parking right next door to the giant.
A lesson in branding and maybe legal caution.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of our daily vibecasting for today. Quite the journey from bourbon woes and papal thoughts to pub closures, AI bias, tipping debates, geopolitical tensions, and side chicks.
It really covers the spectrum, doesn't it? Our aim is always to try and cut through that daily noise, to give you those key pieces of insight, help you connect the dots on what's actually moving the needle in our world, one post at a time. Just trying to help you stay informed quickly and hopefully deeply.
So as you head back into your day, maybe mull this over, how do these things we talked about, these online snippets, actually reflect deeper currents, changes in the economy and society, maybe even in our own values? And what's the next vibe that's going to pop up and make us all stop and think?
Yeah, keep observing, keep asking questions. There's always more layers to uncover in this digital world we're all navigating. Often the biggest shifts start as small signals online.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious.